RodCAST, the all-encompassing car show where we talk about all things automotive. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, Greg Acosta, editor of Engine Labs and all-around tech guru. How are you, Greg?
I'm doing pretty well. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited for the show today. We have a special guest. We're going to get into some fun. We can talk about some interesting topics that we haven't covered on the show before. And so I'm excited to get into it. As you know, we have a special guest. People probably know him from his very widely popular Instagram page and social media presence, Mr. Garrett Alexander Reed. Most people probably know him by his online handle, AmericanMuscleHD. You want to go ahead and bring him on, Greg?
Yep.
What's up?
What's going on, Garrett? How are you, man?
Oh, man, just hanging out. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I've been looking forward to this all week. Every time you and I meet, whether it's at a trade show or just around the industry, we always have great conversations. And so I was eager to talk to you, man.
Yeah, man, I'm super excited. You know, I don't get to do these that often. So whenever I get a chance to, I'm always about it.
Yeah, man, you're kind of like a pioneer a little bit. And I don't know if you set out to be, but, you're like OG social media guy. And for our people who don't know, I started following you on American Muscle HD, I think around probably 2012. And I think that's around the time that you got started, right?
Yeah, I think I actually started in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. So it'd have been around that time. Yeah, we talked the other day. It was about 2013, February, around that time. Because I just surpassed 7 years of doing this stuff this past February. So I know you as Garrett, but the rest of the world seems to know you they know you as Garrett too, but a lot of people know you as American Muscle HD. Right.
Do you get a lot of people coming up to you and say, "Hey, you're American Muscle"?
Well, a funny thing is, up until just about recently, I never really posted any kind of content, especially on American Muscle HD, about myself. Whether it be like who I am as a person or what I look like. So a lot of times I'd go to shows, I'd be walking around, I'd talk to people. I'm still just a normal guy. And, I never introduced myself as American Muscle HD. I only really ever bring it up unless it's like a lucrative thing. Like if I'm talking to businesses, whether it be for sponsorship stuff or whatever. But if I'm just talking to people, I don't ever bring it up because I don't like the idea of that being me. It's part of what I do, but it's not me. I'm Garrett. You know what I'm saying? So
right, yeah, that's part of this brand that you've cultivated.
Right, exactly. So up until recently, nobody really ever knew me. I would go to shows and then I'd come back home and then I'd post content from the events and I'd have people DM me or comment on it and say like, "You were at the show?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, we probably talked and you just didn't know it." Yeah. But when I was actually on Power Tour last year. This is around the time that I, started on my last build, and a lot of people started following my personal page, which has more content about me. And when the car was parked in Holly's booth, I actually had people come up to me and call me by my name that I never met before, and that's weird. It's a weird feeling because I was just like, I felt like I should have known them. If they knew who I was, I felt like I should have known them. So when they come to me, I'm just like, "Oh, hey, what's up?" And I hate it because I don't know who they are. But
I suppose those are challenges that you're met with, in the social media landscape, right? Because we have these characters that we create online, and so then people feel familiar with those, and so it's easy to strike up a conversation in person if you're familiar. But I guess that brings me to my next question. Like, you've been doing this for a while, and I'm curious about the impetus, like what your inspiration was, how you got started, and where you got your inspiration.
I'm glad you broke down what impetus was because I was just like, I was about to ask my Google Home real quick. No, yeah, the real reason behind starting it was never anything like grandiose or like, whatever. It was just, I had, Instagram was fairly new at the time when I started. I think it had been around for about a year already on iPhones because I've always been an Android guy. So it had been around for a year on iPhones. And a buddy of mine had started a truck page and we were at a local car meet around where I lived, and I was like, "Man, that's crazy, dude. You had like $14,000." So I said, "You know what? Screw it. I'll make a page." And I was really reserved about it because I thought it was going to take up a bunch of my time. I just started college and everything. So I just was like, I don't know if I need to do this, but then I just said whatever and did it. And, I never intended for it to get to this point. I never intended to get to 2 million followers. I never intended to be doing interviews like this, people knowing me across the industry that I wanted to work in. I never thought that that's where it was going to go. I just thought it would be fun to do at the time. So,
well, I mean, it's a testament to your dedication over time, right? I mean, you started something. I think a lot of people, get this idea in their head that they would like to start a page, and they start running it and they realize how much work it actually is.
Yeah.
How, you have to invest time. But to your credit, you've stuck with it. I'm curious though, where you get your inspiration from now. I know that, now you're a talented photographer and you do a lot of different reviews and you do photography for people's builds. Is that something that you picked up along the way, or is that something that you were studying in college? What's the deal?
Yeah, the photography things, I think with most things, you're obviously always going to be your own worst critic. I still think I have a long way to go. I'm not anything special in my mind, but I've had a few good shots here and there. I think it was something that I was intrigued with for a while. I started off with a basic what they call kit camera. I had a Rebel T6
T7i something.
Yeah, T3i. I had a T3i.
Okay, there you go.
And then just basic kit lenses and stuff. And I just said, this would be kind of cool to learn how to do. And I kept going to shows, kept shooting, kept learning. And then I kind of made a decision one day, and I had met some, high profile, real deal photographers that I'm still friends with to this day, like Ross Tyler, Jeremy Cliff, Andrew Link, Justin Sessler, so on and so forth. And there was a time where I just made the decision where I think this was about 2-ish years ago. I was working for the NMCA and the NMRA.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I was working with Steve Walcott and them, and I decided that if I was gonna do photography, even on some basic level, instead of investing a bunch of money in a kit body, or not a kit body, I'm sorry, a crop sensor body, I might as well just pay up and get a full frame, and that way, I'm not wasting money if I want to switch over in the future.
Right.
I bought a Canon 5D Mark III and bought a couple lenses. Yeah, and I got it for a steal on Craigslist with very little shutter clicks, which was a good thing. But yeah, I just decided, I was like, I might as well try it. And I've, pretty much taught myself. There's a lot of things, like I said, I still need to learn, but it's a cool thing to, just practice and try new things. And obviously, like I said, having friends that are photographers, they give me a lot of pointers. So,
right. Well, I mean, that's the mark of a true professional, constantly improving and adding to your skill set. So kudos to you, man. Greg, do you have that still image of Garrett's page? I just want to show that to all of our viewers and listeners. That way they can go follow if they're not currently following, although I'm sure they are, and they can take a look at some of your work.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. I actually didn't know you worked for NMRA and MCA. That's real interesting because that's where I started my career. I spent 11 years with them.
Yeah, man, it was a cool time I was working with them. It was brief. I was consulting with them. I was helping them manage their social media at the time. I feel like they just, obviously that age demographic that they work with is a much older crowd. The racers that they have with them have been around for, been with them for a long time. They're usually middle-aged, if not older or retired. And, they didn't focus on social media. The racers probably don't care too much about social media. The few majority of them had social media, but they didn't put much effort toward it. But I guess they wanted me to come in to kind of help grow their following, to get a little bit younger of an age demographic and get more people to the shows.
Garrett, I'm so glad that you brought that up, man. I don't want to cut you off. I actually want you to elaborate on that a little bit. But, it's weird because the internet is a strange place where people are like unabashed with their commentary, right? And they almost feel like whatever you post, if you post something or put up content, that it was tailor-made specifically for them, right? And then that's how their comments are good or bad or indifferent. Right. And I'm curious, being a younger guy in this industry that's dominated by the demographic that you were just speaking to, maybe like 35 to 55, what has been your experience there? Have you been met with any preconceived notions as to what you know or don't know just because you're young?
I'm sure I haven't had too much direct, commentary toward it. I'm sure people think that way, as with most things. Obviously, as you're older, you have more knowledge about stuff, you have more wisdom. And that's not to say that I know everything, because I certainly don't. I learn every day. I'm not ashamed to admit when I'm wrong or I made a mistake, because if you don't do that, then you'll never grow.
Right.
And I'm not closed-minded in the sense that that I know everything or claim to know anything. I say my motto is I know a lot about a little. No, right. I know a little about a lot. I'm sorry. That's the other way around. I know a little about a lot. And yeah, I just kind of use that to go along, so that way you don't come into a situation absolute, because when you do that and then you're wrong, then you seem like an idiot. Really, you kind of come in a little weary about what you're saying, then you kind of give yourself a little leeway. People are like, no, that's not. And you're like, all right, cool. Then I learned something today.
Yeah. Well, that's that's the thing. Coming from another young guy in the industry, it's important to have no chips on your shoulder, right? Like you come in, I have everything to learn from everybody, and that's the way I look at every meeting I have.
Exactly.
And so I think that's the smart play. Although, on our own social, on Street Muscle and stuff, sometimes I'll post classic photos with questions that are meant to engage, right? And a lot of people will, because they know my face and they know, my age relatively. Right. And so I get a lot of comments like, oh, I guess these young guys don't know about back in the day. And it's just, it makes me laugh.
Yeah.
But,
one of the things is, it's a little off topic, but one of the things that kind of kills, it's funny to me. A lot of people are amazed at my extensive knowledge of older music, like jazz, like Miles Davis, John Coltrane type stuff, or like funk and R&B from the 70s, Motown type stuff. So yeah, I don't think that age should ever be a hindrance to what you know.
Yeah.
I think it's all about what you're brought up with, as well as what you're interested in. Because if you're interested in something, you're going to go out of your way to learn about it and know about it. So
I couldn't agree more, man. And we've say what you want about the millennial generation, but we've been gifted with one thing, and that's this compendium of human knowledge called the internet, right? And so if you want to know about something, all you got to do is Google it. And I'm the same way, man. I like not only classic cars, classic music, all of it. But I am curious, since you started, how has the landscape changed? So you got into this thing and 2 million followers later. What's it like being an influencer now compared to when you first started? Maybe you weren't an influencer yet, but you were watching the landscape.
How's it changed? Well, I think because now that I've been in it long enough that, like I was saying earlier, people know me now in the industry. So when I go to trade shows like SEMA or go to any kind of show like LS Fest or whatever, any kind of car show, I can go up to people that maybe in the past I was afraid to either go up to, or they just didn't know me. For whatever reason, they didn't know me or I wasn't relevant. So now that I've made a name for myself and I've either worked with the companies or they've seen what I've been doing, whatever, it makes it a lot easier because you don't seem like an outsider, if that makes sense. You actually seem like a part of the industry, even though sometimes I like to say that I still don't feel like much. I don't feel like anybody special. It's kind of crazy that I know so many people now in the industry, especially a lot of high up people at OEs. I know people in the marketing departments at Mopar or Fiat Chrysler. I know people at Chevy, I know people at Ford. And it blows my mind because, again, like I said, this was never an intention. I never expected that it would get to this point. So from the state of where I started, I was just, again, trying to make a name for myself. Once I figured out that this was something viable and something that could be something, I just kept rolling with it and tried to figure out a way to make myself more of a, person of interest in this industry.
Well, I'm jumping a little bit ahead here now, but it brings up another question that I have, and that's you speak about working with people that you never expected to, you never planned on working with, but they're great opportunities nonetheless. How has it been? And I don't want to speak out of turn here, but like, how has it been using your clout, for lack of a better word, to make those connections and develop meaningful relationships within the automotive community? Have people been open to it, or was there some stigma?
Thankfully, there hasn't been much stigma. People have been pretty open and pretty inviting. You know, the type of people that, like I said, that I've got to meet has been pretty crazy. And sometimes I met people that I didn't realize how much notoriety and fame that they had, or so to speak, in the industry. I just met them and they, you know, seemed like really nice people. And then later on, I figured out who they were, and I was like, oh gosh, you know, like I remember there was the year I brought my truck to SEMA in 2016. I went on behalf of Roush, because Roush had bought SLP superchargers, and that's what I had on my Silverado. So I was parked right out behind the Roush trailer at Ford out front, and I was inside Roush's trailer one evening, and I was sitting on the couch, and I didn't realize this at the time, but I was sitting next to Jack Roush Jr. And I was like, what is going on? This is awesome. You know, it blew my mind. I mean, he's a super, super quiet to himself guy, but it was, again, it was just, I was like, I'm sitting in, first of all, they rented Simon Cowell's trailer. So it was already baller as crap. We're in Simon Cowell's trailer. And then I'm sitting next to the guy that owns and operates Roush Performance.
That's insane, man. I bet you have a bunch of experiences like that now.
Yeah. I think the best one was when I met Jay Leno, and I got to go to Jay Leno's garage.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, that was probably by far the coolest experience. I got invited out with a bunch of other influencers. They were launching his car care product line, and we got to go and have a tour of his garage, and he showed us around. Super, super nice guy. I brought my dad out with me. And I got a couple stories, but I'll keep it moving. I'll tell you about those.
No. I do want to know about those.
Oh, okay.
I have questions. So yeah, no, bring it on.
All right. So the first interaction I had with him, he comes in and he's talking to a couple people. And he comes up to me. I introduce myself. And then my dad's standing right next to me. And my dad is around his age. So I introduce him. I say, hey, Jay, this is my dad. He's like, oh, cool. I'm glad to see there's somebody my age, not all these young punks. And that's what he said. And I was like, wow, okay. So then he said all these kids are into just Hondas and stuff like that. I was like, wow, man. I was like, see, that's, you know. Anyway, so then my dad goes to hype me up. He's like, no, my son's, you know, he's all into, you know, American muscle cars and this, that, and the third. And the way Jay's garage is set up is there's these giant rooms, and each hallway is got this giant corridor in between. So there's usually a car. You can see all the way through to the end of the hallway. And there's usually a car sitting in the middle of each room. And 2 rooms down, there was a car that he asked me, because it was a muscle car in a sense. He asked me, he said, well, what's that car? And of course, it wasn't anything that I was familiar with. So I'm like, I don't know. I felt like an idiot. And, then he goes on. But the thing is, he didn't demean me. He didn't put me down. He's like a legit car guy. He sat there and explained to me the history of the car. It was a 1953 Cunningham C3.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but Briggs Cunningham was the developer of the car, and him and his wife were like one of the wealthiest couples in the country or the world at the time. And he wanted to race at Le Mans, so he decided he wanted to create his own car. So he did, and it uses a Pininfarina body that he sourced from Ferrari at the time. It was a Ferrari-based body. He took a 331 Hemi and a 2-speed Power Glide and made his own race car, and he won at Le Mans.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome.
So he gave me some knowledge, man. It was super cool because, like, anytime else he could have just been like, see, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But he sat there and explained to me, and he's super, super nice dude.
Yeah, that's one thing I don't think anyone will ever argue, is that Jay Leno is for sure a car guy. So that's really cool, man. I'm curious, though, you know, as one of the OG influencers, right? Do you feel now that the market is like saturated with content? Like when you went to that meeting at Jay's place, were there a bunch of influencers, or was it tight knit? And then if there are, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it was a pretty tight knit group. There was 2 tours that they brought. There was I was in the first tour, and I say there probably was at max like 25 people in our group, and then the next group was probably about the similar size. And the way that they pick influencers, I guess, to come to these things is just based on relevance or whatever the content, like whatever the product is to the content that the influencer has. And you know, thankfully I got invited, and I had I knew somebody that worked with him, so I think that would help me kind of get on the list. But I think now that it definitely is saturated in the sense of there are a lot more pages like mine on social media. So with my page, it's not all my content that's on that page. A lot of it is reposted content in the sense of like, I think of my page, I hate using the word repost page because it just seems so demeaning. I like to consider it like a community where I seek out a lot of like the nicest, builds going on, some of the craziest builds. It could be off the wall. It could be just kind of traditional. And I like to just share it so that everybody has a chance to, see what everybody else has going on. You know what I'm saying? It's basically just a giant community of like-minded car enthusiasts for the most part that people can get to see what everybody else has going on, And then I sprinkle my stuff in here and there.
So do you partner with people who are like builders or manufacturers or whoever, and they say, hey, we got this wicked car. We think it would be good for your page. How does that work?
Yeah. So, I mean, I follow having done this for so long, I've picked up and followed a lot of like the big name builders and shops around the country and even in the world, just to give a few: Roadster Shop, Ring Brothers, Detroit Speed, just to name a few. And, I've obviously built up a relationship with them. So when they introduce new builds, they'll let me know, or I just happen to go on their page and see it. And, it just works out that way. So they'll send me, teaser images or whenever stuff's done. And then you find guys that are just local speed shops or local hot rod shops that aren't anybody big, and they crank out amazing work. And that's the one cool thing about social media is that really you don't, unless this was back in the day and you got picked up by a hot rod or somebody of that, size, very few times would you know about these smaller guys, and sometimes maybe they like it that way, that maybe they don't like being in the limelight, but I feel like their work it speaks volumes and it should be seen by a lot of people. So I try to find for the smaller guys too. Well,
to your point, what you're doing now is similar, or it's akin to what we do, or what periodicals have done in the past, and that's shedding light on people who deserve credit for building something incredible. And you have a knack for that, for seeking those out. You also have a couple builds under your belt that I want to touch on.
Yeah, man.
There's one specifically that I do want to talk about, but I'll save that one for last. Let's start early. You mentioned a SEMA build earlier. Can you break that down for us?
So I'm not ashamed to mention it. My parents bought me a truck back in 2014. It was my, I guess, going into my sophomore year or junior year of college, one of the two. And it was a 2011 Silverado 1500 two-wheel drive crew cab truck. And literally I had that truck stocked for 2 weeks. When I bought it, when my parents got it for me, I had it stocked for 2 weeks. I had already ordered the suspension drop and a couple other things. And then at that point, I started realizing that I could leverage my, social media in exchange for, partnering with companies for this build. So I reached out to a handful of companies: Budnick Wheels, Cook's Headers, eventually SLP Superchargers, just to name a few. And then, and then I met a few people that are, still my greatest friends, best friends to this day, that helped me with that build. My buddy Luis from Creative Street Designs, he's in Houston now, but he helped me install the supercharger. He does all of my engine work. He tunes my stuff. And
did you send us a photo of that one?
Oh, I didn't.
Truck. All right, that's all right. That's all right. We'll get to your next build here in a sec, but yeah. I do have a question about that. So at that time, I'm not sure what your followership was, but was there a time that you experienced when these companies that you're working with or were working with then were apprehensive about working with people in social media because it was a burgeoning kind of thing at that time?
Yeah, 100%. I think it took some coaxing. It took some making them understand what they were getting or what I could provide. Instagram was a little bit different of a platform back then. It was a lot easier to help companies grow and, grow other accounts. I remember in exchange for a lot of the parts that I got from my car or from my truck, I had to actually guarantee an X amount of followers that I would get their accounts to, and usually within a time frame. And it was doable back then, which was crazy. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That's before really Facebook stepped in and messed everything up. But I remember I gained Budnick Wheels like 20,000 followers in under 6 months.
Wow. Holy hell.
Yeah, exactly. It was wild. And it right toward the end of that truck, it started becoming a little bit harder, but it was a doable thing. And that's what a lot of companies, that was kind of the bargaining chip that you had to provide companies to make it work for them. Not everything I got was free. There was some things, like I had gotten my AccuAir system. It was at a discounted price, but it was pretty discounted.
Okay. So I kind of want to jump around here for a sec before we get to your other builds, because we have photos of those, and those are really exciting. I want to talk to you about those. But there's something else that you do with your presence that I really enjoy, and I think your fans enjoy as well. And that's when you partner with big manufacturers, or I'm not sure how the process works, but you get these press vehicles, right? And you do reviews, and you take photos, and you give your audience an inside look to these vehicles before they're ever released to the public. Can you tell us about that? How does that work? And what's your first move when you get the car?
Yeah, man. So that was okay. So in theory, when I was younger, my dream job was to, be a writer / like somebody like, I would say one of the guys over at Motor Trend, like, I can't remember his name right now. The guy with the big beard, Motor Trend.
There's a lot of beards floating around.
Yeah. Anyways, whatever. He was one of my, I was like, man, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to go and travel on a world and get to drive all these crazy cars before they release and all this kind of stuff. So the first, company that ever, I guess the first time I ever got invited to like a press launch for a vehicle was with Chevrolet Performance, the year I brought my truck to SEMA, and it was out at Spring Mountain, and it was for the 6th Gen Camaro.
Oh, cool.
Go out there with them, and we stayed overnight, and we got to drive the 6th Gen on the track. And obviously it was Chevrolet Performance, so they had their cars optioned with the wing and the exhaust and the active, and the suspension and whatever. So that was super, super cool. But it was an on-site thing that I didn't get to take the car with me, or I didn't get to have it by myself for an extended period of time. So that was my first experience with it. And then 2.5 years ago, Dodge, out of the clear left field, came to me, and they started off by sending me just like, some swag here and there. And then they reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to come out to, where was it? Oh, Maine, Portland, Maine, for the launch of the new Hellcat Red Eye.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, they were like, do you want to come? I'm like, yeah. What kind of question is that? So they flew me out there, and we got to drive the car from downtown Portland, Maine to Tamworth, New Hampshire, through the mountains. It was about a 60-mile drive one way. And then we got to drive the cars on a brand new track called Club Motorsport, I think is what it was called. It was a brand new track. It was carved into the side of the mountain in Tamworth, New Hampshire. It was absolutely crazy. It was one of the hardest road courses I'd ever been on because there was no brake markers. I don't know if you've ever been on a road course without brake markers, but it's stupid. Like, without brake markers, because you don't, unless you've driven the track a whole bunch of times, you really forget where to brake. And if I didn't have an instructor in the car on one lap, I would have overshot the turn. So thankfully, he reached over and like pulled the steering wheel in. Yeah, you want to be that guy. Well, it was scary, but so that was my first experience. So then after SEMA that year, one of the guys that works there, Scott Brown, he pulled me to the side and he said, "Hey, we got this was still a month and a half before the car was available to the public to be bought." So he pulls me aside and said, "Hey, we got a red eye down in Atlanta. Do you want to get it for a week?" And again, I'm like, why do you ask me these questions? Just, yes. I
think I can make time for that.
I can make some time for that. So he set it up, and I was able to get it. And that was my introduction to YouTube. I felt like this is an amazing opportunity to be able to get a car, be trusted with an 800 horsepower car that hasn't been released yet. I have the only one in Atlanta, and they just give it to me. So that was an amazing opportunity, and I gave the car back to him with no tread on the back tires. And I was scared because I was those Pirelli P0s are 305 30/20s, and I looked up the price of them, and they were like $305 a piece, and I'm like, I don't have to pay for these, do I? So I texted Scott and I'm like, so do I have to reimburse y'all? And they were like, nah, we got budget for that. And I'm like, cool.
That's awesome, dude.
And then, so fast forward through that, I got to meet a couple people from Ford at an event here in Atlanta, and I networked with them, and then they got me on a list to be able to get a couple Fords last year. I did the new Ranger Lariat, which was a cool little truck. Then I got the Mustang Bullet Edition nice. That I got to take. I actually drove that up to Bowling Green after LS Fest West last year. Holly had the Ford Fest. Right. So I drove it up there for that, which was cool. And then the last two vehicles I had were the wide body Hellcat Charger and then obviously the AMG Mercedes, the GTR. Well, that's a little out of wheelhouse, but I had the opportunity to drive it, so I said, screw it.
Yeah, to your point, that's something that I actually really like about what you do is that you're American Muscle, right? But you review and you showcase other things too, like trucks and even exotic cars like that AMG. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you took your grandma out in that car, right?
Yeah, man. So I was super happy that I got to do that because sadly 2 weeks after that video, she passed away.
I'm sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. It was something that I wanted to do for a long time. I wanted to take her out in my car, my hot rod, but it's always been in the shop, and that car is just way too raw. She's a thrill-seeking lady. Don't get me wrong. As you've seen in that video, she was super. She baited me on with that weed that she did in that video. She was stone-faced. I'm like, are you not enjoying this? And so I just felt like my car wouldn't have been the right car to take her out in. So when I had that car, I took my mom, my dad, and her out in it, and yeah, she just had a blast, man. So I was super happy to had gotten that opportunity to do that with her.
No, that's really cool, man. I'm glad that you've partnered with the people that you have, and you have an opportunity to take these cars out because it gives enthusiasts an opportunity to see something that they probably would never have a chance to.
Right.
And so that brings me to our next point, which I guess is you've partnered with these big manufacturers and aftermarket manufacturers. You have a lot of projects going on. You had the SEMA build that you talked about earlier with your Silverado. And now you have something that you're working on right now, your Cadillac. Can you tell us about your Caddy?
Yeah, the Cadillac kind of just happened kind of randomly. I needed a new daily, so I was always wanted an Escalade for no real reason. It's kind of stupid for a single guy to have a 7-passenger Escalade. But I said, whatever, bro. It's like, it's one of those things. I just made a decision. I did it. And then, of course, like anything else, I can't leave stuff stock. But I had a rationale. I thought, well, these trucks have a propensity to have failures with the DOD. So I'm like, well, if that's the case, then I've got to tear into the motor at some point. I've got to change the cam. I'm changing the cam. I might as well add a supercharger. I might as well do exhaust. The head's got to come off. So I just, I made excuses. And I made reasons for having to do all the stuff that I'm doing to it at the moment. I haven't started on it yet. I've just been compiling all the parts. Of course, this whole virus thing has kind of, killed the timing of everything. And
yeah, dude, tell me about it. We all have projects going on that are kind of at a standstill at the moment, but we plug along. I'm curious though, what's the idea behind the Escalade? Like, I know you said it's a 7-passenger vehicle. You're a single guy, so like, what's the deal? What was the idea behind it?
1 second. So the real reason behind it, I guess, I don't know. I just wanted to have something kind of baller. I've always, like I said, I've always liked Escalades, and they're fairly reasonable price wise for what they were. So I just said, and I came across a really good deal on this one. So I just said, whatever, let's do it. And like I said, there was real no reason. I think I had a. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think we were experiencing a little bit of a delay, but I was asking for the specs on the Caddy. Like, what drivetrain does it have? Is it 2-wheel, 4-wheel? What's the deal?
Yeah. So it's a 2014 ESV Platinum. It's got the 6.2. It's all-wheel drive, and it's got just under 110,000 miles on it now. I've put a few miles on it since I bought it. And the 2-owner Southern vehicle, so it's a pretty solid truck.
Who have you partnered with on it so far?
So I got my people at Whipple. They partnered with me again on it because I have a Whipple on my other car we'll talk about in a minute. And so we're slapping a 2.9 Whipple on it. I got Cook's long tube headers. I've got a Bell-Tech suspension drop. And then I've also got Bear brakes that I'm going to run on, Bear big brakes. Nice. Actually, I'll do 2 sets of brakes. They sent me the Errata Speed rotor upgrade with the so the biggest problem with these Escalades is in a lot of the trucks, SUVs, or the trucks and SUVs, is that the rotors aren't big enough. The actual surface area on the rotors aren't big enough for the size of the vehicles. So the Errata Speed rotor is, I think, almost 1.5 inches bigger rotor. So it's a lot more, surface area for the caliper to clamp onto. And so they sent me a set of those to replace the factory rotors with, to give an example of how, having a larger surface diameter for brake torque will actually increase the stopping power.
That's awesome.
So I'm going to do that first, and then they're going to make me a custom set of calipers. I'm actually going to do the big brake kit. So I'm going to have the 2-piece rotors all the way around, and then the custom 6-piston calipers.
Oh, that's fantastic, dude. Those guys at Bear know exactly what they're doing. I mean, what's the curb weight on that Escalade?
Close to like 6,000 pounds.
Yeah, and then you're going to slap this big Magnuson on it. It's going to be moving. This thing's just cooking, and you got to stop it. So that makes sense. That's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of one of the things that I'm going to point at when we're doing video. When we're doing video on the install.
I meant Whipple.
Yeah, Whipple. It's all good. So it's going to be one of the things that we're going to make point of during the install videos is how braking is important. You throw a bunch of power at something, you go drag racing or whatever, or just messing around the street. You got to be able to stop. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you're getting up at higher speeds. So
I figured that when you posted that the Escalade, I was like, oh, he's building a hauler. He's going to haul his project. He's going to haul his race car. I love that car. It's not a secret. Everybody probably already knows the car, but for those of you who don't, Garrett's got the sickest Monte Carlo, and I love Monte Carlos. Tell us about that G-body, dude.
Man, I appreciate that compliment, man. A lot of people have told me that, and I take it with extreme thankfulness and gratefulness. But I drew a lot of inspiration from a lot of OG G-body guys when I was building this car. Started to think about building this car, and it's an 84. Yeah, it's an 84 Monte Carlo SS. We bought it back. I bought it back in December of 2017. My buddy Luis actually found that car out in Henderson, Nevada. And I think no, you're good. You're all right, Mom. Mom's in the background. Yeah, you see her right there. I'm sorry, I'm talking to her. Yeah, so my buddy found the car, and it was in pretty decent shape. I mean, the paint was faded pretty bad because it was out in the desert. So it sat out in the sun for a long time. But it was a running driving car, had a 350 TPI motor in it with a 200 R4 and a 10 bolt, nothing special. And literally it was a planned build from the jump. Like the car sat for a good while as we were compiling all the parts from the sponsors. But as soon as we got everything, it was just all go for it,
Dude, walk us through the build from the beginning, and then I want to know what's going on in this photo on the screen right now.
Oh yeah, that was probably one of my proudest moments in my life right there is that picture. So the reason I even chose a G-body was I was at Power Tour 2017, and that was the first. I mean, not Power Tour. I'm sorry, LS Fest East, and that was the first year I had been to that show. Heard a lot of great things, so I had to go to it, and I got to meet my good friend now, Alex Stivoletti from Detroit Speed. Oh, you get my charger out of my room from my computer. It's on the floor. My computer. It's not going to die, but I just don't want it to die in case. Yeah, I met him there, and I told him that I wanted to look at doing a new build because I had gotten rid of my Silverado and I was, itching for something else. And obviously, I didn't get a lot of love on the Silverado because it wasn't a muscle car. So I figured I need something that, one, I can afford to build and buy, and two, that I'd enjoy and people would want to work with me on. So I couldn't go and just jump straight into the 60s and 70s stuff because, what I wanted from the 60s and 70s would have cost way more. Even as a bucket, it would have cost way more than what I bought this car for. So That's maybe down the road when I'm a little older. But I got this car because Detroit Speed and Holly both at the show, they both were like, hey, if you want to build something, let us know and we'll be all for it. And I'm like, okay. So as soon as after SEMA 2017, I went ahead and bought this car out of Nevada. And shortly after that, all the companies that, obviously Detroit Speed and Holly both, started saying what parts you need, just let us know and we'll start sending them. So that was the initial point of it.
Dude, that's awesome. So how long was it from when you started to the point where you're roasting the hides off that thing right there?
Oh, wow. So going forward, in January of 2018, I reached out to my guys at Chevrolet Performance and because I wanted to do a crate motor. And Woo! There you go. So it's a LSX 376 B8. And of course, it's got a Whipple 2.9 blower on it. And it's a stock motor.
What does the B8 designate?
So the B8 designates 8 pounds of boost is what the motor's factory rated at. Yeah. So they had the B15, which is what I wanted. But see, this is the funny thing. So I had asked for the 15 and I could have got it. But at the time, they were back ordered like 6 months, right? So we're expecting, I'm expecting that it's not going to take very long and we're going to get the motor pretty quick, right? Come to find out, Chevrolet doesn't do anything fast. They do nothing fast. Right, yeah, this isn't a knock to them. It's just the way that everything works and they're a huge corporation. Everything's got to go through legal and all this kind of paperwork and all that kind of stuff. So Sure enough, it took 6 months for the paperwork to go through. So I could have gotten a B15, which is one thing that I kind of regret. Like, I'm just like, gosh, dang it. But, beggars can't be choosers. They sponsored me on a motor that I'm still forever grateful for. So it is the B8 and it's like I said, it's got a Whipple 2.9 on top of it. But basically that whole entire motor is bone stock. We didn't touch anything on the crate motor itself. It came with everything. It came as a completely assembled long block minus, intake, front drive accessory headers, so on and so forth.
Right. Everything that you were already going to swap anyways.
Yeah, exactly. So we didn't do anything to the heads. We didn't put a cam in it. We didn't do anything. We just slapped the supercharger on it. And then we ran all Holley LS swap parts. So we have the full low mount front drive accessory, have the hooker headers, MSD coils and coil brackets, Holley Dominator ECU. I mean, it has everything Holley that you need. It has the crossmember, has the motor mounts.
So you also have the Holley display, and this was like early on when they first developed that, right?
Yeah, I was one of the first people to get that thing. I remember it was SEMA 2018, and I was in their booth, and I saw it, and I told Bill, the marketing director over at Holley, I was like, dude, I need that. And I thought at the time, I went back home after SEMA, and I measured the factory dash where the gauge cluster goes. I measured out between the vents or in that little shroud that the gauge is sat in. I measured it and it actually wasn't going to fit. And I thought to myself, this is before this picture, and I decided to send the car to get interior done. I didn't want to go too crazy with the interior, as you see now. It has. At the time, I didn't want to go that crazy because I didn't want to spend that much money on it. But at the time, we just said I had Dakota digital gauges in it, which are great gauges, but it was a little bit of a headache to get them to work with the Dominator. And so at that point, I said, you know what, screw it. We'll make this gauge set work. And we stuffed it in there for a little bit, and it worked. It wasn't the prettiest, but it worked. And
hold on a second, Garrett. Am I seeing this correctly? You have a hydro in this car?
A hydraulic handbrake?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, buddy. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
So that was a really like spur of the moment, like no real reasoning behind it. Just my guy. So I have Willwood. I have all Willwood stuff on this car. And I just, for whatever reason, was just like, man, it'd be so cool to have a hydraulic handbrake in this car. And again, for no particular reason than just to have one, you know.
In any car, but especially a supercharged Monte Carlo, yes.
Right. And I'm no pro drifter, you know, none of that stuff. I have very little experience with it, but I said, you know what, I'll do it. And for the price that I got it, man, I was just like, this is a no-brainer. And so it's going to be a hoot when I get that car back and we get the calipers on it, and I can go and swing this thing around like properly.
That's awesome, dude. So what's tell us about that photo where you were doing a big old burnout and donuts and stuff. And I think you blew the tires off, right? That time?
Just about. Okay, so a little bit backstory. So people that don't know about this car, yeah. So, you know, we were building it, and summer of 2019, last year, we were thrashing on the car, had just gotten it back from paint, not even 2 weeks after paint, took the car on power tour, drove from Atlanta to Charlotte, North Carolina, went to the show on Saturday at ZMAX, parked it at the hotel, woke up the next morning, and it was stolen.
Yeah, I remember that, dude. I remember.
It was the most heartbreaking thing I had ever experienced in my entire life. When you consider all the time, effort, money that you put into something just for it to get turned around and taken from you in a matter of however long it took them, I don't even know. And right underneath your nose too, because the car was parked right outside our hotel. Like, we were on the second floor, but it was parked basically right underneath our room. And I was just like, "Are you kidding me, man?" Like, it devastated me for real. I was heartbroken. I was probably depressed for a little bit, but you know,
so
yeah. I mean, not to get religious or anything, but grace of God, prayers, whatever you want to call it. I got the car back over a month after it had been stolen, and surprisingly, and it makes no sense, but the car was completely intact with very little damage done to it. And I think the only reason why I got it back in that condition was because of social media. I had a lot of people. I obviously posted it on my page. I posted about it on Facebook, and it was reshared like almost 4,000 times off of my status on Facebook. I had a lot of people in the industry, shops, publications, Hot Rod Magazine reposted it. So it had a lot of heat around it. And so I think that is primarily why I got the car back.
So I don't know how much you can talk about it from a legal standpoint, but where did they find it? What happened?
Oh yeah, no, it's good. So the car was stolen, like I said, in Charlotte, or in Concord, which is right outside Charlotte, and they found it about 30, 40 minutes away up in a city called Troutman, which is right near Mooresville, which is where all the NASCAR teams and Detroit Speed, ironically, which is my suspension sponsor, it was found around there. So I got a letter in the mail, which was ironic. It was weird. They had my number. I don't know why they mailed me a letter, but anyways, I got a letter in the mail that they found the car. And of course, I figured the worst. I figured the car was completely stripped. I had gotten it off my mind at that point. I'm moving forward. You know, I had gotten paid by my insurance company and all this kind of stuff. And then, I called my buddy up that lived in Mooresville. I'm like, dude, they found the car. It's at this junkyard or whatever, or this, tow yard. So he went over and took a look at it, and he's like, dude, the entire car is still here. I'm like, are you? I was like, you're lying to me, bro. And sure enough, he took pictures of it, and it was all there. I was like, this is wild. So yeah, it took over a month, and I got it back. Now, I didn't get it back physically into my possession until LS Fest East last year, which is where that picture was taken. So the car got stolen in June. I didn't get the car back until September.
Man.
So 3.5 months. Or yeah, July, August, September. Yeah, 3.5 months.
So was there a did they ever find the culprit, or they just found the car?
Yeah, so the thing that sucks is, so there was 5 cars that were stolen that night out of Concord. It was mine. There was a yellow Malibu wagon that was parked directly to the left of mine at the same hotel. And then there was 3 other cars stolen at a different hotel. And the only other car they found was that yellow Malibu wagon. And sadly, it wasn't in the same condition as mine. They kind of tore into it a little bit, but it was recoverable. And I'm thankful to report that happy to report that the owner is in the process of restoring it back to its condition. And he plans on taking it back on power tour again this year. I told him he's a crazy person. I'm not My car has never seen Power Tour again.
Well, it sounds like they just didn't get to yours yet, and that's a good thing for you.
Yeah, hold on, I'm gonna grab some water real quick.
Yeah, no problem, Garrett. Greg, can you put up that photo where he's burning out again?
Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to take a look at this car one more time
before we move
on. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I won't lie to you, bro. This dude George Kimball over here. I said I won't lie to you. This dude George Kimball over here in the comments has kind of annoyed me with this.
Oh, really?
You can see the comments or not.
No, I can't.
Yeah, he's not on here anymore, but his comments kind of annoyed me.
Oh, I didn't see any of them. But
all good. Don't worry about it.
There's always somebody who has something to say about something.
100%. I know all about that.
But one thing I did want to talk to you about the car is its appearance, dude. It doesn't look like any Jeep body that I've seen. I've known you for a little while. I've seen you around the industry. You're definitely a stylish guy. You have like a certain style that's all your own. Is that something that you wanted to carry over into this build? Because it's a pretty unique looking car.
Yeah, man. I mean, there was a lot of things that kind of snowballed into how this car was built. It's really hard. I mean, you can get renders done of cars, of course, and they come out as pretty close representation of what the car will end up looking like if you stick to it. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there's still a little bit of doubt in your mind that it's not going to turn out exactly how you planned it, and then you're gonna be like, dang. So when I, decided that I wanted to get the car painted, that was probably one of the most stressful decisions that I ever had to make because one, I'd never had a car painted before, especially a color that's not the same factory color. That makes it a little easier. So, thankfully I picked the right color, I think, in my mind. It's pretty similar to the factory color that was on the car. It's a little bit more blue. The original color was a little more like blue purple. But this car, it doesn't show well in pictures, but if you see it in person, it has a lot of flake in it. It's got a lot of flake, and that's what I loved about it. That's what drew me to it. So when I went to the paint shop and the painter showed me the color that he had picked out, he showed it to me on a paint stick, and it was directly in the sun when he took the picture, and I said, that's the color I gotta have. It was absolutely beautiful. I don't know the name of the color off the top of my head. But it is a factory GM color, if I'm not mistaken. Is what he told me.
It's the perfect color for that car and those wheels, all of it, man. But I'll stop making your head grow any bigger. But Garrett, one thing that I enjoy about speaking with you is your professionalism and your attention to detail with regard to back scratching, if that makes sense. Like, you're always promoting for the people who promote you, and that doesn't just go for manufacturers. I mean, other people in the media as well. So kudos to you, man.
I appreciate it.
As an influencer, I think you can be used as a model for credibility in a landscape that's ever changing, and more pages are popping up, and perhaps other people's credibility is in question. So I don't know if that was by design. I don't know if that's something that you sought out to do, but I think a lot of people can take notes from you, and so good on you, man.
I appreciate it, man. It's one of those things where I've always been, I was raised where like you treat others like you want to be treated, right? So it's not a hard concept. I did not get here by myself. I had a lot of help from people that I didn't even know that well, just random people that I ended up becoming very good friends with. And to this day, I'm incredibly appreciative and thankful for. So, I always give credit to where credit's due. Emily Williams, you probably know who she is. She's a real heavy hitter in the industry. She's really advocating for women in the aftermarket and car world, which I appreciate and love. She single-handedly, introduced me to people that snowballed into friendships and partnerships that I still have to this day. My buddy Jerry, who helped build my Silverado and still helps me build my cars today, is one of my best friends. And I only met him because I met my buddy John Barefoot, who works at Johnson's Hot Rods, because Emily told me to go meet John because he lived near me in Atlanta, and he was doing cool stuff at a local shop. So, it's one of those things where, you always got to give credit to people who help you out along the way, because, you're never going to do it by yourself as much as you think, right.
No, that's really cool, man. And it's a mark of someone who's a real professional. And, Before we let you go, I want to play a quick game with you. It's a game that we play with some of our guests when we have a little bit of time. It's a segment that we call Automotive This or That, and we usually ask our guests to choose between two similar makes and model of car. Now, usually we select different brands and models that fall under the same category, like a V8 powered sports sedan, for example.
All right.
But since you're the head of American Muscle HD, I thought we'd change it up a bit and narrow it down. So let's roll out round one, Greg. So for round one, you basically, we'd like you to choose between this 72 Ford Mustang Mach 1 and a 2003 Ford Mustang Mach 1.
Yeah, so the 73s in my mind were like 73, 74 was like the last good years of Mustang style until I guess the Fox body came out. The Mustang 2 just did not do it for me. That was around the mid 70s, early 80s when like the gas crisis was about. So everything was economical and the design was just not there. So I probably, and then the new edges are cool. Of the new age body style, I picked the Terminator. The Mach 1 doesn't really do it. So I'd probably pick the 73.
Okay. All right. Dude, you can't go wrong with the 351 Cleveland and a 350.
Yeah. Did they put the 4-speed top loaders in those at all?
I believe it was an option, but not in many of them. And I think a lot of them were convertibles. They only had a few hundred of the 4-speed in that car.
Got you.
But that's the winner. All right. Round one. Round two is going to be a little bit similar. Different make, though.
Okay.
So we got a 72 Z28.
Beautiful. Oof.
4-speed. And then we got an 02 SS. You know, it was almost impossible to find a good photo of a Z28 in that blue color.
I bet, man. Catfishes don't get enough love. A lot of people, they're great drag race cars. They're great street cars. But this is no competition. It's easily the split bumper. You cannot beat a Z28 split bumper Camaro.
You know, I agree. But in 72, it was like, the first year that you couldn't get the big block. And if I'm wrong, I'm sure I'll get roasted in the comments. But, this was, to your point, what you were saying about the Mustang, they started dialing back. I think you might have still been able to get the 396, but I don't think so. I might have to do some fact checking. And viewer, if you're mad at me, leave a comment and tell me how wrong I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can't beat the Z28, man, with a 4-speed. Come on, get out of here.
Yeah. Great car. I'm thankful I can drive some of those.
All right, let's roll out round three, Greg.
Y'all picking the late stuff. I'm surprised y'all didn't pick any like the prime years. Like this is like 72, 73 Challenger.
I know, that's why I wanted to make it a little bit more difficult because if we gave you the early stuff, then it's a no-brainer. This one, think about it a little bit.
I think for sure that the 72, 73, 74 Challengers still, again, didn't get enough love. And I think it's only because, and they're not much different than the 70s and the 71s, other than that, downwards, frowny shaped grill. What I'm saying? They still have that same twin snorkel hood, the same body lines. Now, I don't know what the motor packages were like. I don't know if they came with 6.440s or anything like that.
So 72 was on the end of the tail end of that, right? So I think early 72 you might have still been able to get them, but the majority of 72 and beyond,
340 cars.
Yeah, the RT would have been a 340, and a choke 340 at that, making not even 300 horsepower.
Yeah, and then what we have over here is this just a regular Hemi 5.7.
Yep, it's a 5.7 2011 RT. But I mean, it's you could have got it with a 6-speed, and that RT is making 370 something horsepower, 376, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, this is the one thing I applaud Dodge for doing is keeping the original, somewhat original looking style with their late model muscle car Challengers at least. It's best to pay homage to the original of all three that are still out. But again, I'd have to still go with the old school.
Okay.
73. Yeah.
Fair enough, man. So you went old school across the board. To be fair, though, Dodge didn't make anything that was comparable in 2002. So I couldn't post it.
Okay. Yeah, they went on a hiatus. They didn't have any sports cars really, except the Viper, but that wouldn't have been a comparison.
Right.
I would have picked all day long, by the way.
Eric was asking me, what we should pick, and I wanted to go with muscle cars, obviously American Muscle HD, but I know you do trucks and you do all imports and all kinds of stuff, but it's just a fun game that we like to play.
Yeah, no doubt.
Garrett, before we let you go, let the people at home know what you have going on, what's on the horizon for American Muscle HD, what's on the horizon for Garrett, where can people find out more, where can people watch what you're doing?
At American Muscle HD on Instagram, or it's American space Muscle space HD on YouTube. If you type in American Muscle HD, it'll come up. I've got I've got a new review hopefully coming out soon. I just called and found out I'm getting a new car. I'll tell you guys, it's a 2020 Cadillac CT6V. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. I saw, was that Car and Driver posted that teaser photo of it the other day?
Well, that was the teaser of the CT5V, the one that's supposed to come out next year. The CT6V is out right now, and it's a really, really, really interesting car. If you haven't looked it up already, you should look it up and what kind of numbers it puts down, and just the overall thing about it. It's one of those anomaly sports cars that slipped through the cracks of GM that probably should have never been made, but they did it anyway. So I'm thankful for them. So I'm hopefully going to get to review that here in the next couple of weeks. And then, I'm going to start creating obviously more content. You're going to see me doing more, me more on camera, doing my review stuff on YouTube, hopefully cross-pollinating with some other influencers and publications in the industry. And I'm just trying to get my face out there more so people know me more as Garrett. And then American Muscle HD is just a brand.
I appreciate it, Garrett. Garrett, thank you so much.
Yep. Ben and Greg, thank you.
It's been a real pleasure to speak with a car guy, influencer, builder, brand ambassador, et cetera, et cetera. I have no doubt that you'll continue your success and continue to provide us all with good content, man. Let's do this again soon, yeah?
Yes, sir. I appreciate it, man. Hopefully after all this is over, we can go meet up in Vegas for LS Fest and I can show you the car, take you for a ride.
Yes, sir. That sounds good. And we'll talk to you soon, man. Peace, brother.
All right, man. Yep. Take care.
What up, Greg?
All right, man. That was that this or that didn't go how I thought it was going to, for sure.
Dude, me either. I thought for sure you would have picked at least one of them.
I'm not going to lie. His thoughts on the Camaro, dead nuts on mine. They dovetailed perfectly.
I like the Catfish, man. But you're wearing a Mustang hat right now.
But how many times have we had this conversation? Like the Mustang thing, yeah, I probably would have gone with the Mach 1 just because it's an NA4 valve and it's just it's really cool. Huh?
You mean the New Edge?
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. They're both Mach 1s. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. But yeah, I would have gone with the New Edge. I think, yes, I like the Catfish Camaros, but no, I would have gone with the split bumper.
I think out of all of those, the only difficult one would have been for Chevy, just because of the performance that you get with a Catfish over that of a split bumper. But the looks are just there's an astronomical divide between the looks of a Catfish and a split bumper.
Without a doubt. They're in different galaxies. I mean, the Catfish. I mean, it's one of those, only a mother loves it. Right. You've got to love it. I mean, like truly in your soul for you to love a Catfish. The fourth gens, granted, the Firebirds, a little bit better looking.
Yeah, the WS6 is a sharp looking car. We've talked about that before.
Absolutely. Like I could, if somebody put a gun to my head and said, you have to drive a fourth gen for like a year, it would be a WS6. That wouldn't even be hard.
You mean have to, man? You get to drive a fourth gen for a year. But I do want to pick your brain a little bit about having Garrett on, dude. It was a real pleasure. It was cool to talk to somebody who does something that's related to what we do, but is totally different at the same time. It's weird because as the landscape has changed, editors like you and myself, we have. We kind of also have to do what Garrett does, plus what we already do for running the titles and stuff. So it's interesting to speak with somebody. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think I've got a couple of thoughts. First off, influencer, I think in the industry is kind of looked at as a bad word almost.
Right.
And he is the example of what an influencer should be. Like
Right.
he is what is making influencer not a bad word anymore. I followed his page long before I ever met him. He does a great job, and I really think that if more influencers were like him and had his drive, his work ethic, just busting ass like he does, the influencer would not be a bad word anymore.
Yeah, I agree, dude. He brings a level of professionalism that adds credibility that I think other people kind of create that stigma, right? By just, oh yeah, let me use this presence that I have to get this or get that. But really, it's more about developing relationships and giving back to the community rather than what can I get. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that just goes into a lot of things. Like, even when people just try to get sponsors for their vehicles, everybody thinks a sponsorship means free stuff.
Right.
Nobody seems to understand nothing is free and how much work you have to put into it. People who get sponsorships put in so much work. And I think that might be the same scene with influencers. People think influencers don't work hard. They just sit back and post something on Instagram and that's that. That's not true. And that's just not true.
Well, it's a huge part of what we do as well. I mean, that's, managing our social media presence is a big part of our job. And so I think people don't give that as much credit as it deserves.
Yeah. And another thing that Garrett's doing, and I think a lot of the Instagram and Facebook stuff is doing, is getting to a younger crowd. And that's something we've been saying forever, is if we don't carry on the tradition and we don't carry on the passion, our hobby's going to die.
Yep.
So you know what? Yeah. Some people may scoff because it's a new form of social media, a new form of media. As long as it keeps our passion alive, I want to be the grumpy old man who's sitting there going, kids these days, but if we don't, then it won't happen because it won't exist. So yeah, I'm all for all that just to keep our hobby, our industry alive.
I totally agree. As long as it's done right. I enjoy working with people like that. And, like I said, I've met Garrett a few times at different events. And so I was keen to have him on, and I'm glad that we did. Like you said, he can be used as a measuring stick, I think. Good guy.
Yeah, but, seeing your face light up when he offered you a ride in the Monty at LS Fest West.
Well, everything that happened kind of put the kibosh on that. We had planned on it. I plan on doing a feature on that Monte Carlo and shooting some photos whenever we do get a chance to get out to LS Fest West. And so that was always the game plan. And so, yeah, I cannot freaking wait, especially now that I know he has a hydraulic e-brake. Come on, buddy.
It's funny you mentioned that, because when you said that, the first thing I did was start looking, because I didn't see it the first time.
Yeah, neither did I. I looked at those photos maybe a half a dozen times before we threw them up on screen. And then when we were talking, I was like, hold on a second. This guy, he's got the pull stick.
He's got a hydro. Why is that there? What are we going to do with that?
Yeah, man. But totally cool. I think it's a step in the right direction, getting some young blood into what we're doing. I mean, the guy's only 26 years old, and he's on his way to building a massive social media empire. So good on him, man. Good on him.
Yeah, for sure. And seeing his Monty, it's just so cool. It, like you and I were talking, bit of trivia that honestly I don't think I've ever shared publicly before. My very first ride in a car ever was a G-body.
Oh, that's right.
I came home from the hospital after being born in a G-body.
What year was that, Greg? Date yourself.
83. It was a 78 Cutlass Supreme.
Nice.
I wish I still had that car. That car was awesome. That was in my life for into my teen years. So that's that car was around, and then just it got sold, and that was unfortunate. But
I'm so disappointed that I wasted an opportunity to potentially drop some G-body knowledge on Garrett.
Well, you have to save it for the next one.
Well, real quick before we sign off, I don't know if you know this or not, but 84, the year 1984 plays some significance in the G-body world as far as Monte Carlos are concerned, and that happens to be the same year that Garrett's is. 84, they moved assembly and production to Mexico, and so their Mexican versions of the SS, right? So we didn't have an SS in the United States, but they had an SS in Mexico, and it came with a 305, coincidentally, and a 4-speed, and they're super rare. I'll have to pull up a photo of one next show, but yeah, viewers, go check it out, the Mexican Monte Carlo.
So was that like a legitimate SS, or was it kind of like? And I hate to talk Honda, but like in the early days of Honda, the SI and the SIR were all like the badass ones, and Canada got an SIR, which was the same as an SI here, but that R seemed to be super duper popular to the point where people would get the Canadian ones, even though they're the exact same car. They just had that R on the back of them.
No. So in 84 in the US, I believe they didn't do an SS, so you couldn't get the 350. You could only get a 305, and it wasn't an SS. It was just a plain Jane, 305 with probably a turbo 350, if I had to guess. And then in Mexico, they did the SS version, but for them, because of like rules on displacement and engine size, the 305 was their big engine. So the 305 became the SS, and then they didn't have any automatics. They were only available with a 4-speed, like Saginaw. So they're super rare. They only made like, I think a couple thousand of them, if that.
But
anyway, I digress. Viewers, listeners, next week we have another special guest ready for you guys. Tune in this time, Street Muscle Magazine Facebook page, noon Pacific time. Every Friday, we go live, RodCAST. Me, Vinny Costa, editor, Street Muscle Magazine. Greg Acosta, editor, Engine Labs. Greg, do you have any parting shots before we take off?
No, I'm good. This was a good show, and I enjoyed having Garrett on.
Yeah, drop a comment in the section and let us know who you want us to have on, who you want us to talk to, who you want us to interview, and what you want us to discuss. Until then, we'll see you next week, Friday. Peace out.